Hi, Stephen here from Fated Crossings, and I would like to just say a few words on the Cancer moon. Perhaps if anybody you speak to with reference to the Cancer moon, they're going to say that they cry a lot, that they exercise their lacrimal ducts for no reason. Unnecessary or unprovoked tears seem to be part of the Cancer archetype. And, there might be some truth to that. Although I have met some Cancer moons who absolutely never cried. These tend to be people with perhaps a sun in Aquarius or something of that nature. Um, but we mustn't think that those with the Cancer moon are sort of doormats, passive crybabies, because Cancer is a cardinal sign. It's actually kind of vigorous. So Cancer moons tend to be people who are rather driven, believe it or not. They would rather instigate instead of just waiting around. So it's kind of strange, Cancer is, because it's a yin sign, cold and wet. And by that I mean that things happen to Cancer. Cancer doesn't necessarily happen to other things. It attracts events, attracts people, and reacts to them passively. But because it's a cardinal sign, Moon in Cancer sort of instigates in emotional structures that belong to other people, right? This, I think, is vital to the understanding of the Cancer moon. That it is actually assertive in stirring up the emotions of others. It wants to agitate the feeling nature of other people. Now, I use this word very carefully, very deliberately. And I don't intend it in a negative sense, agitate, as in to annoy. I mean it instead in the sense of a washing machine with an agitator in it that kind of pummels and beats up the clothing inside of it in order to purify the clothing and to cleanse them better. So being a cardinal sign, it always wants to start these emotional projects that are designed to learn how the soul works. And the Cancer moon wants to do it for itself and in others. And, they can be a little impatient about it. People might disagree with me, but I stand by what, I said what I said, as the young people today say. I said what I said. Cancer moon can be rather impatient, and it hates to be ignored. Ignoring a Cancer moon is about as bad as ignoring a Leo. And in fact, Leo and Cancer actually have more in common than one might think. For one thing, both of them are the domiciles of the luminaries. Cancer is to the moon as Leo is to the sun. So we might say that Cancer is a nocturnal Leo, a royal sign. And, just like Cancer moon hates to be ignored, Leo also can be very emotional. So there's more to these signs than they have more in common than one might think. So Cancer moon is going to react with sensitivity. And I use that term also very deliberately, react. Again, because it's a water sign, stuff is going to happen to it, and it finds itself reacting all the time. Maybe even in a hyper-emotional way, hyper-protective, overprotective. And again, they need emotional security. And this might be one reason why the Cancer archetype is famous for nurturing other people. This nurturing behavior is designed to provide the emotional security, emotional safety that Cancer needs. Now, because it is a cardinal water sign, it's definitely going to be very sensitive to the moods and the reactions of other people who are around it. I think that's one thing we can certainly count on when it comes to Cancer. It's going to have almost a psychic ability. It's always shooting out psychic feelers that want to, in a way, kind of invade the other person's boundaries. Cancer, generally speaking, whether the moon is there or not, Cancer is going to invade boundaries. That's what it's all about. And I hate to talk about the Cancer moon like it's Genghis Khan, you know what I mean, or something aggressive like that, but it is what it is. It wants to invade other people's boundaries, get inside the person, and map out their interior reality. And this often happens without the Cancer moon even being aware of it. It wants to seep into places that are not accessible. And for this reason, the Cancer moon needs what we might call a psychic immune system. Now, I can't remember where I heard that term first. I think I encountered it in a book by the astrologer Maurice Fernandez. He wrote an excellent book. I wish I could remember the name of it. You could probably find it on Amazon. He wrote this really good book about Neptune, Pisces, and the 12th house. And in that book, he talks about constructing a psychic immune system. Well, even though he's talking specifically about Neptune, Pisces, and the 12th house, I think that Cancer moon also needs to have a psychic immune system, some kind of force that will protect it from the sort of the passive tendency to accept other people's energies due to their lack of emotional boundaries, due to the porousness of their ego. They need to really kind of filter out unwanted emotional impressions. I think that's extremely important. The question might arise, why are they this way? And, I think it's because it's their habit of soul. In their past lives, they had some kind of function in society where they were healing people, or perhaps waking people up to the divine, to the unity of the universe. Perhaps they were preachers, clerics, pastors, imams, priests, druids, mystics, things of that nature, or, people in the helping professions, doctors, nurses, things like that in the past life. And so in this life, there is this almost supernatural understanding of human nature. There is this need to get under people's skin, to activate their emotions. There is this requirement for caring and intimacy, a need for a mutual exchange of emotions. So, that also could account for the crybaby archetype, the idea that Cancer moons can suffer sometimes from emotional disturbances. But I hasten to add that this is not always the case. I have met Cancer moons that rarely, if ever, cried. In fact, they would say, they claim never, ever to cry, ever. So, a lot depends on where the Cancer moon is at. In psychological astrology, everything that I just said, I think it holds. But we have to remember that when we're doing practical horoscopy, then the Cancer moon can actually represent somebody else, depending on where it falls. It might not necessarily pertain 100% to the chart holder. For example, in the 3rd house, a Cancer moon says something usually positive about a sibling that the person might have. So just doing kind of a brief run throughout the houses. Moon in Cancer in the 1st house is going to promise competence, effectiveness in life, because it's the 1st house. It's going to promise good health. In the 2nd house, it's going to promise assets and wealth, even though Moon in the 2nd house often introduces some fluctuation in the money. But with that taken into account, it's actually quite fortunate to have Moon in Cancer in the 2nd house, even though the person might have some financial instability simply because it's the moon. In the 3rd house, it's going to describe a sibling who is fortunate. In the 4th house, it's going to bless the home life and the domestic scene. Maybe a dominant mother figure can be evidenced there. In the 5th house, it's, first of all, I think, going to blatantly promise children, because the 5th is a house that produces children. Cancer is a sign that produces children, and the moon is a planet that produces children. So we can pretty much be sure that the individual will have children, probably more than one. And not only will the children be fortunate, but the individual will be fortunate through the children. In the 6th, Cancer moon will bless the health. In the 7th, it's promising marriage. In the 8th, it's promising a good death. And believe it or not, such things exist. In the 9th, it's blessing the journeys. It's promising fortune through foreigners and foreign experiences. And it's saying something nice about higher learning and mystical or religious experiences. In the 10th, it blesses the profession. In the 11th, it's a generic indicator of good luck and good fortune, and it promises benefit through friends and associates. In the 12th, it promises liberation from disease. So the moon in Cancer is just strong to begin with, because in Cancer, she's in the sign that she rules. And so her lunar nature is going to come through unadulterated, untainted by anything. It's going to be a pure lunar expression. And the moon is even further strengthened if she's in Cancer and waxing, moving away from the sun, growing more and more full of light. It's going to be even stronger if it's above the ascendant-descendant line and the sun is below it, because then she would be fully competent. She would be in her domain, in her element. In the night chart, the moon is definitely going to be the queen of the entire horoscope and arguably more influential even than the sun. So moon in Cancer in a night chart above the horizon is waxing is one of the strongest moons we can get. And in fact would have a definite effect on the person's longevity, assuming that it falls in a house that supports longevity. So we might not look at the moon as providing life if she's in Cancer and in the 12th, for instance. We would reject such a moon. But usually she provides quite a nice lifespan. Now, interestingly enough, in the Middle Ages, there was the advice not to get married under a Cancer moon, which might shock a lot of you because what more domestic placement could there be, right? And, for a while that stumped me. Like, why would they say not to get married under a Cancer moon? And what I concluded was that in the Middle Ages, it would be the man coming to the astrologer seeking a time for marriage and not the woman. And so Cancer, the moon in Cancer is going to denote a woman who's very powerful. And in the Middle Ages, this was not a virtue at all. So the astrologer would say that if you get married under a Cancer moon, your wife will not, quote, be obedient to you. So that's kind of ridiculous in the modern era. I mean, most of us males wind up obeying our wives, and quite wisely so. So that's just an interesting little factoid to keep in mind. And also, we have to remember that in a man's chart, the moon is not just going to show mama, it's going to show wife. And a moon in a cardinal sign like Cancer could be actually a significator for divorce, could be saying more than one wife. So that's something interesting to keep in mind. But generally speaking, at least according to the medieval purview, when the moon falls in Cancer, we predict assets and maybe even wealth for the person, honor for the person, and intermingling or mixing it up with very important people like kings, princes, and people of that nature, especially if the benevolent planets, Jupiter and Venus, aspect the moon. If Saturn or Mars aspected the moon, then this would reduce the goodness of this placement. So, those are my comments on the moon in Cancer, and I hope that you enjoyed the video and maybe learned a little something about this very special placement. Next, I will deal with the moon in Scorpio, which is, even though it's in a water sign, is rather radically different. So, if you'd like to reach out to me, the address is steven@fatedcrossings.com. Thank you very much.